Greetings, Ranger fans, and welcome to another edition of Database Rangers Power Reviews, where I take a look back at our classic episodes of Database Rangers Power Reviews as we count down the 100 weeks to the 100th and final episode. And yes, it is October. I have decided to, spook things up a little bit, but I figure this is not my scary costume. Of course, my scary costume is one of the stars of tonight's episode, the landlord. Now, happy birthday to your mom, Rudy. I hope that she has a great one. So, something went away that wasn't supposed to go away. I had something open in the other. There it goes. I had something open that had somehow vanished, and now it is back. There it goes. But yes, as I mentioned in social media and in the past, this is actually going to be the last of our live streams for a little while. So we're only having one for October, and then we will be resuming again in November after the midterm elections. Welcome, Chris. Welcome, Nightwing Josh. Welcome, Axel. Good to see you all. And basically, it's that I do want to really hype up the 10-year anniversary, which will be next Thursday, and I do have a video I am working on diligently to have ready for next Thursday. But after that point, I am going to be taking a break to focus on volunteering for the midterm elections, which are extremely important. If you have the ability to do so, I definitely recommend volunteering. A pair of good websites that one that I like to donate to is Spread the Vote. So if you can search for Spread the Vote, I definitely recommend donating to them. I've raised funds for them in the past. They're very good at getting photo IDs to people to make sure that they have the resources that they need in order to vote, as well as access to other valuable documentation. Very helpful for people who are unhoused, who have no permanent address, who may have been previously incarcerated but have paid their debts to the society. And this helps them reintegrate into society and contribute and help all of us learn from the benefits of their experiences. I very much believe that the people who have suffered the most in our society are the ones who most need to have their voices heard, especially when it comes to representation in our government. So donate to Spread the Vote if you can. And the other organization that I tend to volunteer with is Swing Left, which is a great sort of aggregate website that lets me find when there are various events for calling up voters to make sure that they have all the resources that they need in various different swing states. So I go to that website to find out what phone banks are happening in any given swing state, and that allows me to dial into the phone bank and contribute volunteering on the phones. And I've made hundreds, thousands of calls in the past. I intend to do so again this year because I feel like it's a very important midterm election. I know every election is important, but we are 2 senators away from being able to pass a whole lot of really cool stuff. Voting rights, protecting Roe v. Wade, and just generally overturning the filibuster to make for a more democratic process. Climate change, there were a lot of measures that didn't get into the Inflation Reduction Act that could now go in if we were able to get those 2 additional votes. So do not underestimate the importance of the midterms this year, especially if you live in swing states like Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Georgia. Those are all very important states this year. Yes, Pennsylvania. Don't let Dr. Oz represent your state. John Fetterman seems to be a really cool dude, who's got a good head on his shoulders when it comes to policy. So I've been trying to follow these races while also working, obviously, very, very hard on the 10-year anniversary for the channel and the finale of Database Rangers Power Reviews. I've been filming fight scenes, stunt scenes throughout the week, both on my own and with actors. I've been having people come in to do their guest spots for their final episodes. There's been a lot of filming going on this past week, which has been a little bit of a challenge because unfortunately RJ has been homesick and has not been sleeping well, and we're starting to catch it a little bit too. So we're just both MJ and I have been fighting through that. But a major sequence I'm very close to completing in terms of filming, and I'm hoping to be able to cut it together quickly alongside what I'm working on for the 10-year anniversary, which will once again be something a little bit outside of the norm. It is going to be a video not quite like anything else that we've posted here on the channel, but one that will celebrate what we've done over the course of the last 10 years and what we're looking forward to with the future of the channel. So I definitely recommend checking out our 10-year anniversary video, which is currently slated to come out next Thursday night, October 13th, the 10-year anniversary of Database Rangers Power Reviews. Arkansas, I will say, is not usually a swing state. It tends to go very red, but if you do have any candidates in your area that you support, absolutely put your efforts into volunteering for them. But I'm in New York. New York's not a swing state either. I volunteer for the other swing states. I do so through phoning. If you're not comfortable with phoning, there's always texting, as well as writing postcards, and of course donating to what you deem to be important races. Like I said, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, North Carolina, Florida. Florida's not entirely a swing state. That one I've seen on and off. Georgia, Nevada, and I think Arizona. Arizona should be an easy win. They've got an astronaut running. Vote for the astronauts. Astronauts are cool. So just kind of looping you guys into what's going on there and why I'm so passionate about it. So if you want to see where you can, where your efforts can do the most good, at the very least, if you feel the way that I do, swingleft.org is a great resource. If you have a different party that you wish to support, I'm sure that you are probably better versed in ways to support your party than I am. Obviously, as I have established in this, I have established many times, I do not support the Republican Party, and I do believe that climate change is a very real risk that they do not take seriously, along with rising tides of fascism, as I have tackled on multiple occasions, which I'm not down for. not okay with. So I don't want to dive too much into all that, but I did want to, at the very least, address it because that's the reason that I'm not going to be having streams for the next few weeks. After the election, November 8th, I am going to resume doing the live streams again. So that will be Tuesday, November 8th, Wednesday the 9th, Thursday the 10th, the 11th. So November 11th, Veterans Day, I intend to resume with our coverage of episode 93. But as far as tonight, we got to dive into this thing. And I think that this is a good one to look into. Before we do, of course, let's not forget our 3 equally non-controversial phrases. So, number 1, say it with me, chat. Black lives matter. Number 2, say it with me, chat. Fascism is bad. And number 3, say it with me, chat. Superheroes are fun. So let us check in with our favorite superhero, one Mr. Database Ranger, and, of course, his supervillain nemesis, the Landlord. In episode 92 of Database Rangers Power Reviews, our review... Ooh, why is that not connecting? I just noticed that something was not connecting properly. Let me just... unplugging and replugging things to make them work again. There it goes. Our episode 92 of Database Rangers Power Reviews, our review of Power Rangers RPM, episode 23, and action.
Previously on Power Review.
But Database, we've got a Power Ranger.
So, and action is obviously a very different kind of episode, and it's one that I debated on whether or not I actually wanted to cover, because I covered so much RPM. But ultimately I decided that I couldn't not cover this one, and I'll get into that a little bit more as we dig into things. Do I think the Phantom Ranger's identity will ever be revealed in canon? I realized I missed that earlier. I don't think any further than it has already been revealed, but I didn't think that the backstory that we got was ever going to be a thing. So who knows, honestly. Now this is just like what we had in episode 82 and 81, 82, and 83, where you would see me in front of that window, and it's very echoey because there's no furniture in this apartment at this point. This is one of the last things that we filmed in the original apartment before we had to move out. So while I had finished when I finished writing episode 87, instead of writing episode 88, I jumped right into writing this episode because I knew that it was going to be taking place in the apartment, and I wanted to make sure that I had that written before the episode came out. And so this was filmed in September of 2016, even though the episode itself didn't come out until, I believe, February of 2020. Or 2021. Oh, wow. Because this didn't come out until after RJ had already been born. And this was filmed in our old apartment. This apartment is completely empty at this point. There's no furniture in there. We've already moved everything out, with the exception of just like some junk that was in some closets that I was still gathering up. And I was driving here in the middle of the night after I had put my students to bed in their dorm halls. After it was like, okay, everyone go to bed, lights out, it's the end of the night. I waited to make sure everybody was asleep, got in my car, drove 45 minutes back to our original apartment, which we hadn't fully moved out of yet, and shot these scenes. And I'm not gonna lie, I was so exhausted. Like, that little end action, like, I don't know if you can tell, my eyes could barely focus at that point. I was so exhausted when filming as the landlord for that. Now, here, when I sit down at the couch, that was actually filmed in the apartment we just moved from. This was specifically the episode that I kept the red couch for. I still have the remnants of the red couch, but I kept it in place in the apartment. I didn't dismantle it until this episode was filmed, because I still needed to film from the couch, which was in our previous little studio. And you can hear the difference in the sound quality. There's a little less echo. There's much less echo. Oh, and I loved doing these little montages and sneaking in these little outtakes in the montages. That was a lot of fun because it allowed for me to integrate some behind-the-scenes footage that I wouldn't be able to include in the series otherwise. Um,
Playing Diggy the actor, playing Diggy the ranger, that does not sound so good. Well, it's not like they ever explain exactly what the scenario is here.
And one other thing that was kind of interesting shooting these little back and forth bits is I had to keep it tight so that you couldn't see that there was no one sitting next to me. But also I had to try my best to recreate the lighting of the old apartment. Usually I just use the umbrella lights at this stage. But I was trying to make sure that I would have slightly warmer light on like the landlord's face to match with what would have been a ceiling light in the old apartment, and using a desk lamp for database to again try and match that lighting, and really blend these shots well so that you could still feel like you were still in the same space as the opening scenes. And although I did write those opening scenes, well in advance, back in 2016, literally, like, I was writing the opening and closing of this episode while I was, like, sitting at a barber shop waiting for a student to get a haircut. I then actually didn't finish this script until 4 years later, because I had to focus on writing all the more Potsner stuff next, along with, episodes 88, 89, 90. So, let's see, I had to write, after this episode, I went back to writing 88, 89, and 90, and then I had to also write parts of 93 to make sure that I had all of Arbeta's scenes written before she moved away. I had to jump over to writing 95, 96, and then I skipped over 97 to work on 98, to try and make sure that I knew exactly what plot beats would lead into the finale so that I could write as much of the finale as I could that was going to involve other actors. So my writing process became very chaotic around this time, because this was when I broke the sequence in terms of writing for the show. So I didn't actually get back to writing episode 92 until I had already written most of episode 100, which was very strange. I love this little character beat here, where Database describes his friendship with Dr. K and how important it's become to him over the course of the series. I really like sort of diving into this back and forth between him and the landlord. Like, there's no trust here, and the whole episode is just slowly wearing down, and trying to get Database to be open to whatever the landlord is about to describe to him. And I'm still amazed that 10 years later, Olivia Tennant returned to the series. That's still wild to me.
Computers wiping away wires,
but yeah, all of this here, where they're digging into what goes into producing Power Rangers, just felt like it was very necessary to address if I'm truly going to be doing a retrospective of the series. What else was I going to... Maybe I could have done Power Rangers the movie Secret Revealed, but that wasn't really an episode. Maybe I could have done, behind the scenes of Operation Overdrive, but again, that wasn't really an episode. I acknowledged both of those later on during the conclusion, but I wanted to stay on track and cover an episode, and this one felt most appropriate at this stage. I love this back and forth with Database and the landlord actually in perfect agreement on something, and they're just like, and we just get that little look at each other, which ended up lining up very well. That like every time that I get to do the two of them on the couch together, I'm always pleased at how smooth that came out, which really speaks to how much better I'd gotten at compositing with that couch by this point. Also, just them bonding over the idea that nobody likes chicken. Like, nobody likes chicken cat. It was just such a fun thing to say as the landlord, and I kept cracking up as I was saying that. Oh, and there we got a quick little behind-the-scenes shot of me choreographing the fight with T Omega from episode 63, which was another thing that I wanted to make sure to sneak in there. And I wanted them to go by fast enough that Database wasn't entirely sure that he'd seen what he thought he'd seen. And yeah, honestly, I would love to do more behind-the-scenes stuff with Power Reviews. It's literally just that I have so much behind-the-scenes footage that it's so much to sort through. I have no idea where I'd even start. Without just hours going through hours and hours of blooper reels. It is not due to a lack of bloopers. It is due to having so many bloopers. I don't know what to do with them all. But I am going to try and address a little bit of some of that in our 10-year anniversary video. So if you do have, again, I know I've said it before, if you do have any questions regarding the production of the show that you've ever been interested in about, please make sure to comment below, and I'll try to address them in the with the 10-year anniversary video. I also love how I keep going into these segues where I end up like as almost like a quick like throwaway line, explain away a major Power Ranger plot point. Oh, and here we go. Here we get to see our bloopers. There was me and MJ, and there we have our Beta, and us falling apart on that choreographed fight scene. Selective. And yes, I had to pull from. And I always wanted to make sure to get that bit of Dave cuddling the little fox. Everybody laughing together while we were filming the holiday party. Justin smacking his knees so hard when he spun around in that console. That one time the wall fell over. That was actually a little scary. That disrupted filming considerably because we needed a moment to calm down. Because it was like, oh no! And I had to get things back up. And in terms of Technobabble, I had to use the first episode where Dr. K used the squee. So I really chose my bloopers to try and reflect the bloopers that they were using, to try and figure out things that would match well. There's so many other things I absolutely could have included, but I didn't want to overdo it. And I would have had to go trolling through so many other past episodes to include more. But and that's why a lot of the bloopers I ended up using were more from year 3, because I knew where to find those a little faster because they were more recent. But I also wanted to make sure to include the T Omega fight from year 2 and the squee introduction from year 1, because I figured that those would be the best ones to reference from the past. this is once again, like, you know, I know I've said this in a number of scenarios, but this is sort of our last kind of fun two-person review that we've had. You know, and I missed doing those. Like, I hadn't realized how much I'd missed the couch reviews until I was sitting down and doing this couch review and putting together this couch review. Because, you know, at this point, the last time that I did something resembling a couch review had been 2017. And so it'd been like 3 years since I'd done a proper couch review. And it just seemed like a really fun way to sort of introduce database and the landlord side of what I call the twin trilogies. And yeah, here's Power Rangers, the movie Secrets Revealed, which I felt like I could not go without acknowledging if I was going to be talking about behind-the-scenes specials. There ended up being a lot more to discuss in this episode than I expected. Like, I wasn't sure how much commentary I was going to have on, you know, on what functionally is sort of this behind-the-scenes clip show. That was, you know, a bottle episode they did on the cheap to try and make up their budget. And I ended up having so many things to say and so many tangents to go on. And then we dig into so much with the final conversation that we'll get into at the end. This ended up being one of our longest episodes, which blew my mind when I saw the final runtime. I'm like, how is this so long? I just did 2 giant, crazy episodes. How is this longer than any of these? And that was wild to me when I realized that. And also just all of the sort of the fact this review takes place in the hiatus, which is that place between places, allowed me to have a justification for those outtakes from our universe to bleed through into the Power Reviews universe. Because I always like to have an in-universe explanation for how something makes its way into the show. Even if it's an in-universe explanation of just, he's new to making a YouTube show and his editing is choppy. Not to mention there's so much actual meta discussion that goes into the premise of And Action. Like, RPM has so many episodes that we review by comparison to other classic Power Rangers episodes. I think at this stage, this is the only one that we've done 4 episodes of. And, you know, outside of, obviously, Mighty Morphin, but I'm thinking of that as 3 separate seasons. This is the only singular season at this point that we've done 4 episodes of. And every episode felt tremendously relevant. Like, I didn't want to overdo it on RPM, but I couldn't avoid it with Dr. K being such a core part of the show. We had to review Dr. K. There was no way around that. We had to review Ancient History due to the reference of what would have happened if she went back in time, because that triggers the fact that in our show, Dr. K went back in time. We had to do Belly of the Beast because it informs the actions of Episode 83, where we convert the Alphabet Soup ship into our own Zord, as we've now discovered. And then And Action was just so relevant to behind the scenes of Power Rangers that I couldn't avoid it. And I went back and forth on the order on if I wanted to do And Action first or Lost and Found Translation first. I really struggled with making that decision. And ultimately, And Action just felt like the right pick for 92. And Lost and Found in translation felt like the right pick for episode 94. And then after that we had, you know, even though it did put it very close to the next Nine of Thunder review with Fighting Spirit for 96. Which are the 3 episodes that make up Database and the Landlord's half of the twin trilogies. And here we go. Now we're transitioning back into, again, the original apartment. So this was, again, a scene that I wrote in advance. And one of the wild things about this exchange right here is that the Landlord side of it was filmed in September of 2016, and Database Ranger's side of the conversation was filmed in, I think, January of 2021. So the two halves of this conversation are filmed 4.5 years apart, almost, which is crazy. This was also just a rough, long bit of exposition to get through, and then this little bit here with the coin bit, where I make the coin appear and disappear. That took so much practice to get right without like constantly dropping one or the other. And I think what I ended up doing was actually when I put my hand off screen, I tossed the coins away, and I just edited out the sound of them landing. I don't remember if that's what I actually ended up doing, but I was considering it as I was going through the different takes with the 2 coins. And this whole long stream of exposition from the Landlord, like, was so interesting to write in many regards because I wanted him to be telling the truth, but only part of it. I wanted the Landlord to not lie. I didn't want to have it be, oh, the Landlord is lying and that's just a cheap out. But he does speak in metaphor a lot. When he refers to him and Database as 2 sides of a coin, he's talking about how they've been in a conflict between good and evil for years. And now, as that we've seen the Power Rangers Universe comics, we realize that conflict goes back far longer than we even anticipated. And this feels even more relevant now. I'm still amazed that Power Rangers Universe played up the conflict between these two into being one that it was truly an ancient conflict. And so this, in many regards, feels like the evolution of that conflict. And the way that the Landlord presents everything, he tries to make it sound like it was all benevolent. And this is where we have the origin of the apartment that I teased for years. For years, I joked, I would always say, I have origin stories for everything in this show. The apartment has an origin story. And here we have the apartment's origin story. He created it to sculpt Database Ranger into his fanboy persona. The Landlord created the apartment, and this also explains, at the same time, what happened to Database Rangers, to the Phantom Ranger ship, which we had seen in that little flashback of him getting pulled through the rift, but we never knew what happened to the ship. And here, he mentions that there are bits and pieces of the old ship. The cockpit seat, the command console, the cloaking field, the wireless interdimensional interface. Something that has been there since the second episode with no explanation until now. And this bit right here, where he's now walked over to stand in front of the toy cabinet, this was in our new apartment. Although ironically now, Database is in the old apartment. So again, these are two halves of a conversation filmed 4.5 years apart, except now it's Database Rangers half that was filmed long before the Landlord's half. And as I'm looking at this, I see that one more thing. If you look at the Landlord right now, and then you look at Database, my hair has thinned between the two. All of a sudden, now the Landlord has the thinner hair and Database has the thicker hair. And it was the other way around just a moment ago. But actually, one little hint that you can tell, that helps you tell that this is in the second apartment, is if you look, the reflection in the toy cabinet is actually the edge of the doorway from the ship set. I didn't have anywhere else I could put it to get out of the way, so there was no real avoiding that. And the toy cabinet was already gone by the time that I filmed in the apartment. But I also just loved revisiting these little bits from way back in year one, giving that extra context to what led into that, because we played around with that before, and it had been treated as a flashback that was then decided to be a deception, and then again, it's revealed to have actually been something that Database went through. And this is one of those big mysteries that, again, we haven't quite addressed yet. Somehow, Database managed to manifest the fake apartment that the Landlord had created for him into the real world, the world of Power Reviews. And here we give the Landlord this motivation. It has, and this little reveal is where we finally insert that little splinter of doubt into Database. The Landlord is now, we've now introduced a motivation for the Landlord, this wish for freedom that he'd worked towards for so long and then felt like was stolen from him. And you start to wonder, does the Landlord actually have a sympathetic motivation? And I'll be honest, I don't think anybody really trusted the Landlord at this stage. But I wanted to at least introduce the possibility of him being a sympathetic villain. At this point, very few people had managed to guess his true identity. There was like one or two people, like years back, who had guessed that, who had guessed who he might really be. But then we had these little other explanations. Like, oh no, he was just a manifestation of Database Ranger's dark side that Database had created while within the hiatus. But then we have the subversion of, no, he's leading this demon army, so he must be some other actual entity. And then we establish here that he might be Database's memories made manifest is we established that, oh, when we saw Database in the hiatus during the Winter Trilogy, it wasn't his first time in the hiatus. Which is also, like, again, another reveal that keeps peeling back the layers until you get to the truth. And I really like playing around with that, where even when we have these misdirects throughout the show, because we have had a lot of misdirects on various questions the characters have had, I always want to make sure that any misdirect is still revealing some part of the truth, just presented in some context that makes you think it's something other than what it is. Like, this really leans into the idea of the landlord being a manifestation of Database Ranger's memories, which ended up being a misdirect. But, at the same time, through that misdirect, we have the reveal that Database had been in the hiatus before, and the apartment originated from there. And we get a better understanding of how the Phantom Ranger became Database Ranger. Because there's so many differences in the personalities, in terms of how we've seen them. And I keep wanting to try and make sure that these are all things that are reconcilable within the context of the story being told. To have it feel like the Phantom Ranger could reasonably have become Database Ranger, even though they don't behave in necessarily the same manner. And I think that goes hand in hand with the idea that when you meet people in different contexts and at different stages of their lives, you may have trouble believing that that's the same person. You may know somebody through work who's always very quiet, always very dedicated to their job, and then maybe you meet them years later outside of work, and you realize that they're like this huge, crazy party person. And it just kind of flips, your perspective of who the people you know really are. Because there's always so many facets to everyone that you know. And I wanted to kind of lean into that to a certain extent with Database, and to have also it be clearly driven by traumatic experiences that he's had, that change fundamentally how he behaves. And we've seen him grow across the course of this series and recover from what he went through. Like, him being so shaken back in episode 29, episode 29, right after Dr. K had first vanished. Or no, episode 28. 29 was Idle, sorry. Episode 28, right after Dr. K had first vanished. And him being so shaken by that. I wanted that to be that was where his mental state was at that point. And to have him grow past that and learn how to adapt and rely upon the people around him for support and trust them, and learn to trust in himself more. Because, let's face it, he had just come from, before the events of the series, a world where he was completely gaslit into believing that he was somebody who he was not. And even though he was not even aware of it at that point in year one, feeling that happening again was a very hard hit for him. That idea that his reality was not reality, when it came to Dr. K. And I wanted there to be sort of an underlying reason why that was such a triggering experience for him, even if he had no longer had the memories of why it was so upsetting to him. And this gives you that. that extra context of how he had been so heavily manipulated by the landlord into thinking that everything that he had ever experienced was just part of a TV show. And how, you know, deeply unmooring that can be, and how untethered you become from anything having a strong cornerstone of reality that you can rely upon. And I think that I can't speak to anyone else, but I feel like having a strong cornerstone of reality is something that is necessary for functioning within the world. You know, I've over time come to very much believe that so long as the world around me remains internally consistent with what I've been presented so far, I choose not to doubt the veracity of that reality. Because functionally speaking, you know, even if it was an illusion, it would be an illusion that is so thoroughly elaborate that I am not capable of piercing it, and I have no evidence to indicate that it is something that is not truth. And that's sort of how I go about my life in terms of my relationship with reality. This has gotten very metaphysical in this discussion. But these are some of the things that I get to thinking about when digging into these sorts of character struggles, like how we perceive the reality around us and how we know what is real and what is not. Database previously was very susceptible to these manipulations of reality, but he's gotten a lot stronger thanks to Dr. K being able to protect him using the lolcat, the laser optic lineation cerebral array transceiver. But also, he's learned not to inherently trust not to trust the landlord, and learn to believe in himself and his sort of internal truth of his identity. He knows at this point that he is the Phantom Ranger, and he's not going to be swayed from his understanding of who he really is. And I think there's a lot of allegories that you can make when it comes to that. You know, when it comes to having that strong sense of who you really are and recognizing that no matter what someone else may try to enforce upon you, you cannot be, who you are is something that is intrinsic to your experience of reality. And you can't let somebody else take away your internal sense of self, no matter how they may try. And that's sort of what the landlord is trying to do to Database here. He's been trying to rob him of his sense of self. He has learned that that is no longer a path he can take directly, but that is what he did to him in the past. And I try to sort of sell the heavy distrust and distress of that. Much like how, you know, we've seen with Dr. K and the directors, how she cannot trust them after what, you know, has been done to her by people who were functionally them but not quite them. There's a lot of layers of characterization that have gone into this show, and I hope that I have done those themes and concepts justice. Like I'm pleased with the final output. I hope that, you know, those themes that I'm trying to explore I'm exploring hopefully well and in a way that people can relate to and find compelling. Uh, this was also very much an episode that is there. It's sort of a bottle episode in many regards. It's just the two characters, both played by me, and we had done that before for the Winter Trilogy, and this is sort of almost the sequel to the Winter Trilogy in that regard, where they get to confront each other, understanding each other better than they did before, and seeing that sort of counterpoint between them. This was, and I realized that I hadn't really dug into it in the previous episode, but one last thing I did want to address is the structure of Year 3 at this point. I've described this run of 6 episodes as being the twin trilogies. We have the 3 episodes on the ship, the 3 episodes between Database and the Landlord, just sort of meshed together, alternating back and forth. And I forget if I think I've made mention of this before. This arc is actually inspired by the show Farscape. I don't know how many of you have watched Farscape or enjoy Farscape. There was a stage at one point in the series, I want to say maybe season 3, I'm guessing? I can't quite remember. I think it was season 3. Where they realized that the cast had gotten a little too big, and in an attempt to better service the characters, they went on 2 separate missions. And what they did to the main character was they had him sort of cloned and split into 2 separate people that are both him. And they put one version of him on one ship and one version of him on the other ship. And so they would alternate back and forth so that one episode would be him interacting with one half of the crew. The other episode would be the other him interacting with the other half of the crew. And that allowed them to sort of focus on those characters a little bit more closely than they would have been able to otherwise. And I decided to do the same thing, but in the stupid way, where I'm like, okay, I'm going to have adventure on the ship and adventure in the landlord with the landlord's lair. But I'm going to have copies of my main character. But I'll put both copies of my main character in the same story together, and I'll put everyone else, including 3 copies of my other main character, in the other storyline. So we would have the 2 database, the storyline that had 2 of me, alternating with the storyline that had 3 of MJ. But I think that it came together well, but I think that it may have, that the pacing did kind of drop down during this arc a little bit, because I think people were a little bit more interested in the Database Landlord arc for this stretch, because this is where all the story, all the backstory stuff was coming in. Meanwhile, the ship storyline was a little bit more of a slow burn until it came to an explosion in 95. Hey there, Noel. Yes, I saw the panel for Dino Fury's new season, and who will be returning for the 30th anniversary. Very much looking forward to it. Really interested in seeing what Cosmic Fury has to bring. And I will be discussing some of my plans moving forward with regards to that within the 10-year anniversary special that we have coming up next week. So that is one of those things that I will be addressing a little bit in the 10 year. There's a lot of stuff that I'm going to be addressing in the 10-year anniversary special. It's not going to be as big a thing as I did for the 9-year anniversary special, unfortunately. Well, I wanted to obviously do a really big 10-year anniversary by releasing the finale. Instead, it is going to be a bonus video that's going to be a different kind of video from what I've done before, just like a lot of previous anniversaries. But you're definitely going to want to check it out because it is going to be teasing a lot of stuff that's coming for the future of the channel. And I really want to see what you guys think of it. Like, if you're hyped for the finale, definitely check this out. If you're hyped for the future of this channel, definitely check it out. If you just want to support what I do, check it out. I'd really appreciate it. I also appreciate anyone going back and checking out the 9-year anniversary special, because that was one that was very close to my heart that I really hope that people check out. It unfortunately has not been loved by the algorithm because it's kind of off-brand in many regards, but I'm still very proud of the 9-year anniversary special. But I do recognize it is getting late, and that my throat is dying a little bit, because I may be slowly coming down with whatever RJ has come down with. But I do want to again recommend that people donate to spread the vote. You can Google it; you can find it easy. There's also other great organizations that we've raised money for in the past, like Fair Fight and the New Georgia Project. There's always individual campaigns that you can donate to, or other organizations that help people have the ability to have their voices heard through voting. So I will be taking the next few weeks off to volunteer on Friday nights instead of doing these commentaries. I may or may not do some form of streaming, but it just won't be these until November 11th will be when the commentaries when the commentaries resume. Lost my train of thought there for a moment. But I'm gonna miss you guys. I hope that you will partake in some volunteering or donations in some regard. I will be posting information on my social media in terms of how you can volunteer. I once again do recommend going to the site swingleft.org. That's a great resource for finding events either in your area or online for various swing states, which are going to be very important again for seeing climate change action and voting rights and various other measures being passed, codifying Roe v. Wade. All of that really hinges on just getting 2 more senators into Congress. And yes, I did see that that for next season they are doing a mix and match when it comes to original suits versus a different Sentai source for the Zords. So that's going to be very exciting to see for the first time in many, many years, since the mid-90s, seeing them do that. And I'm really interested to see how they integrate it, how they make things work with the shorter season they seem to be going with. Because it's apparently only going to be a 10-episode season. It's going to be very focused, no filler. And I'm wondering what footage they'll choose to use, what they'll choose to leave aside, what villains may or may not get adapted. There's a lot of stuff that's really up in the air for how they end up running that next season. And I'm curious to see if they'll be continuing how they'll be continuing production of the series moving forward. Are we going to see more 10-episode seasons? Are we going to see more with this cast? Are we going to be switching over to the next cast? What will come after the 30th season? I have no idea. And by all accounts, it doesn't even seem like the production team really knows. it feels like we've seen now, we're seeing an end to the filming 2 seasons at once, which I find very intriguing. Because normally they'd be filming season 31 at the same time as season 30, because that's how they've been doing it for the last decade. But that doesn't seem to be the case this time. They're only filming season 30. It's only looking to be 10 episodes. So I don't know what that means for season 31. If that's going to be completely original, new cast, old cast, different source footage, complete reboot, complete new production. I have no idea. And it's an interesting state to be in. We had to wait so long to get confirmation on Cosmic Fury. And now it feels like we're going to have to wait so long before we find out what happens next after that. So for now, I'm just going to focus on what I know is going on and what I know I need to work on. I need to work on that 10-year anniversary special. I need to work on that finale. I need to work on my rapid run-throughs and deeper looks after that. And during this next month, I need to work on volunteering to get the vote out. As has been established many times in this channel, it's something that I'm deeply passionate about, and I hope that I'm able to engender that same passion within you. So, yeah, that's true. When I come back in November, hopefully we'll know what the next Sentai after Dawn Brothers will be. I still need to check out Dawn Brothers. I still need to finish Zenkaiger. I'm so behind. I was watching Zenkaiger with MJ, and then we just ran out of time to spend watching it together, and I felt so behind, and then Dawn Brothers came out, and I didn't want to watch Dawn Brothers until after I finished Zenkaiger. I have so much stuff to catch up on. Although I have been watching Kamen Rider Geats, which has been very fun. I'm enjoying it very much. So on that lighter note, it's been over an hour. Thank you all again for joining me. I hope I'll be in the chat for the premiere of the 10-year anniversary special on Thursday. I really hope that you guys enjoy it, and enjoy the little sneak previews that are going to be included within it. And I hope that I can deliver something truly satisfying with that finale. And I hope that everybody has a happy and healthy Halloween at the end of this month. I hope that everybody remembers to go out and vote at the beginning of next month. It's extremely important, especially if you live in a swing state. If you're not sure if you do, Google it. You should be able to find a list of swing states very easily. And again, I do recommend Swing Left as a great organization for finding how you can volunteer online for the various different races going on. Thank you so much. No, I don't know if I'd call it a vacation, because I'm going to be working hard, but I appreciate it. So before we go, let's not forget our remaining 3 equally non-controversial phrases. So, number 1, say it with me, chat. Love is love. Number 2, say it with me, chat. Trans rights are human rights. And number 3, say it with me, chat. Robots are cool. And sometimes they need a little psychological recuperation. Alright, so I'm going to try and rest up. I've got some more filming to do in the morning. Thank you again all for joining me. I hope you have a wonderful rest of October. And until next time, farewell, Ranger fans, and let the power protect you.